Peace, Black Power, Raobat, Hotep. I wanted to do this because looking at everything that has transpired over the week in terms of black men, African men, whatever word you want to use, um, it's been kind of strange. It's been kind of like every time you turn around, there's always something within the news from the situation, of course, with Mike Vick that I'll be talking about now to, OJ getting paroled. And then you have the situation with Usher. And then, I mean, it's always something. It's always something every time you turn around. It was something. And then, of course, with the R. Kelly situation with the sex cult. With everything that can be talked about, the one that really bothered me, to be totally honest, the most, aside from the R. Kelly situation, was the Mike Vick situation. The Mike Vick situation really bothered me because it spoke to something that I remember hearing on Kendrick Lamar's CD "To Pimp a Butterfly" when he did a play as if he was doing an interview with Tupac. And it was something that Tupac said where he was saying, like, after the age of 25, black men become more docile. Like, the system pretty much beats out any aggression that, I'm paraphrasing though, but the system pretty much beats out any aggression that we have to even fight racism at all, to fight any other race, to fight white people, to fight anybody, to fight back, And once we get into a certain age, we kind of get into basically selling in to accepting what's going to happen to us. I mean, that's the truth. Because you can see it socially. You see a lot of our men, we'll get real aggressive towards each other. It don't take nothing for me to get into a fight with a black man in the street. But when it comes down to that same black person fighting the oppressive system, all of a sudden we got a million excuses why we can't do that. And that speaks volumes to who we are as a people and us accepting our position as basically being footstools to white supremacy and white people and every other race outside of African people. We just accept it. So the situation that I'm talking about, just in case those who really aren't paying attention to the media, was the situation with Colin Kaepernick, where, and I'm mentioning this, I'm not caping for Colin Kaepernick, but this situation needs to be talked about. Whereas, the question was asked to Mike Vick on a sports talk show, what do you think he should do? And Mike Vick was like, well, first off, he needs to cut his hair. And it was just like he went on this really goofy coon rant. And it was like, wow, like, the biggest thing with black people I noticed is that black people were saying, well, damn, Mike Vick, we was rooting for you. And I was like, yeah, we did. Who didn't root for Mike Vick over the years? Of course, I was a big Mike Vick fan, from the Falcons to the Eagles to wherever he played. We wanted him to come up. We wanted him to recover from being in prison. Because people forget the man was in prison for 2 years of his life. And we don't even remember that. We forget, like, yeah, this man did time. They made sure this nigga went into jail, went into prison for what they said he did. And that's what happened. But you got to understand it in this society, over a period of time, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, but this is reality. Those black people who are in like a high position, whether it be black leaders or celebrities, when they go broke, there's no safety net for them. See, when you by comparison, when you look into the system of white supremacy in terms of let's say white actors, white athletes or whatever have you, just white public figures, there's always a system that is set up in order to be a safety net for the white race. They're never without a job. Whereas black people, we're so happy to get the job that we'll do whatever we can to keep the job, because subconsciously we feel like there's no help for us. Like, if I lose my job, ain't nobody gonna help me. Ain't nobody gonna put no money up to save me. Ain't nobody gonna put their house up. Ain't nobody gonna, there's no fund, there's no think tank fund for black people who stick up for other black people. That's why over a period of time and down through the years, you see more black submission, and mostly by black men most of the time. Now, of course, you had the Stacey Dashes, but most of the time you see the men, because the men are usually the upfront figures in our race. And with that being said, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll use that as a reason to say, well, shit, these niggas ain't gonna help me, so why should I stick up for them? And we don't really think about that. Like, we don't think like, just let's just take it to, and I'm not gonna go far off the subject of Mike Vick, but just think about this for a moment. When you have black leaders, most black leaders who really put in work died broke. Their family died broke. There was nobody helping them, from Khalid Muhammad to Malcolm X. Our leaders died broke, poor and penniless. And at some point, we kind of accept that situation, that there is no help, that we pretty much are going to go out here on a limb and do what we need to do to help our people. That's the truth. Like, even if a person's just a teacher, and you putting out some information that might be threatening to society, the social norm of how the society is ran, you're going to face a threat of death. And you have children or whatever have you, nobody's going to be there to help you out in that situation. Because we have not created that type of situation, because a lot of us are broke anyway. So we really can't, even though, but then there is a lot of our people that don't think like, well, shit, we need to put our money together, that, hey, if this man is going to put his life out there, we got to be ready to basically be there in order to be there for him or her, and say, well, hey, if you're going to do this, if you're going to dedicate your whole life to the whole movement, then we got you financially. So that at some point, when whites put you in this position, that you don't immediately turn because you're afraid that, damn, I ain't going to have no money. Or, damn, my family ain't going to be straight if something happened to me. Well, I need to go ahead and I'm going to need to go ahead and kind of, coon it out a little bit and, and play the game, so to speak. So the situation with Mike Vick really was just like, it was kind of sad, because you also had another generation of children looking up to Vick, like that, everything that he brought to sports and the football specifically, we looked up to, and we loved that shit. We did, because he dominated. He made people look, made white people look crazy on the field. And so, it's like with Jordan, we still are trying to hope that at some point he gonna stop messing with the white women and go back to black women and at some point let Nike go, let the Air Jordans go and do something for black folks, but that's not going to happen. He will tell you straight up, niggas ain't going to help me out ever. Even with the situation that happened with him and Chamillionaire. It was funny because I was like, I'm not surprised he said that to Chamillionaire, because he's looking at it like, you niggas ain't shit anyway. I done made it, why don't you make it? See, we it's funny. Black people have become a walking contradiction. We're social, but we're very individual. On one breath, we're social because we're integrationalists for the most part, but we're individualistic when it comes to success. Success should never get to a point in a black person's mind where it's like, well, if I got it, you should be able to get it yourself. It should also, we also should be trained with the mindset of the, opening up the door. Like, if I open the door, then we should be able to keep that door open. But then the door is like still society, rather than just creating our own house. We still want to try to find a way to fit in their house. But that's a whole different subject. But the Mike Vick situation again is to me was just sad, because it's an example of black male submission, that it's like, damn, I'm not gonna make it. They're not going to help me. So why am I going to stick up for black people? Why should I stick up for black people? For what? They're not going to help me. They're not going to pay my bills. When I went to prison, who helped me? Nobody. Only person and this is the mindset of a lot of our people. It's like when even with, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, with the Trayvon Martin situation happened, and then you had the situation with Mike Brown, and you had the situation with Sandra Bland. You had a lot of sports athletes, you know, from Deion Sanders and Michael Irvin, of course, Charles Barkley, he's been cooning for years, that always had something negative to say about black people, or it was always something like what we need to stop doing. It was like you need to stop being a dumb nigga and accept your situation. It's because the whole thing, like what Mike Vick basically said, is you need to perform better so a master can give you a job. Cut your hair so a boss can give you a job. And it's really some bullshit to say, because Mike Vick is being very disingenuous with his statement. You know that's not true, because if you go on withoutsanctuary.com, most of the people that you see, black people that you see that are being hung from trees and castrated, were wearing suits. They wasn't wearing sweatsuits. They wasn't wearing shorts. They're wearing suits. So these are business owners being killed like this. So for him to say something like that is very disingenuous, and it was wrong. Because why would he? Because then he came out today and apologized. And I'm saying, if you meant what you said, why would you apologize? You should have stood by what you said and spoke your piece and just been quiet. Since you feel like what we need to do as black people is buck dance and shoe shine, and we can make it, because that's really what you said. You know, the hair. He kept talking about the hair, and he's worrying about it. Whenever you see an athlete who's, you know, a black athlete who's on his way out do something like that, he's trying to campaign for a job. You know, he wants to be on, you know, Sports Take or whatever that show that Shannon Sharp is on. He wants to be Shannon Sharp at some point. He wants to be able to have a job, because that man still owes money. Mike Vick still owes money. So he's trying to find a way to continue to get some form of NFL money. You know, because no team no longer wanted to take him anymore, so he was forced to retire. So he's trying to find a way to get this money, which is still cooning, is still some bullshit. But again, it speaks to the reality that a lot of us as black, and I'm 36 years old, but it's very rare that black men after the age of 30 have any form of aggression left. When you're in this system as long as you have, and you see murder and you see police brutality, and you're in a maze. So each corridor that you're going into, you see some form of Black Death and some form of restraint and some form of resistance being met. So you get to a point where you say to yourself, I ain't gonna never make it out of this shit. I might as well play the game. I might as well do whatever I gotta do to survive. And that is reflected in what he did. Because why would you say that? If that wasn't your aim, why would you say something like that? Which was very disrespectful to the situation. Again, this is not me. I'm not a huge Colin Kaepernick fan or anything like that. We could have switched it up and made it beast mode. You know, Marshawn Lynch, it would have been the same result. You know, because this coming from Mike Vick, who for years wore braids. You know, he wore a do-rag and the whole nine. You didn't have that mindset when you were doing that. Now all of a sudden, this is what we need to do as black men to survive, is we need to cut our hair. It's no different than someone saying, first thing he needs to do is stop wearing a hoodie. You know, then they won't do nothing to you. You know, it's the same mindset that all we need to do is change something about ourselves and we gonna be fine, which is some total bullshit. And we know it's bullshit, but that speaks to the aggression there. Like, I could take that, you know, that submission, that black male submission, into what we were talking about a couple of days ago about R. Kelly and the pedophilia. And a lot of black men, specifically black men, I'm not going to go into the sisters, but a lot of black men were saying things like, well, you know, if it's 19, it's not that bad. If it's 18, it's not that bad. And I had a conversation with someone. I said, when I have a child, if anybody touches my children, I'm cutting off limbs. And I had people meeting me with resistance. And I'm saying, I thought this was about I thought what we do is about the children. Is it about the children, or is it about you? Because nowhere in your conversation did you say anything about retaliation against what's going to happen to your child. You're more worried about the fact that you damn near 50, damn near 35, damn near 40, and you still look attractive to a little child. But if that same situation happened to your child, you wouldn't do nothing about that? See, there's a lot of brothers, and this is not a beat down black man session, but this is a reality. We got a lot of brothers out here who are submissive, and they won't do nothing to even retaliate to something that will happen to their children. I'm sorry. The thing is, you have to prepare for jail time. When you have something that, let's say, happen to your wife or your children, prepare for jail time. If you can't think on that level, if you're thinking like, well, it's always a well this and a well that. We're not aggressive anymore. And we have to get back the aggression. Even if it's crazy shit like me, I took up learning how to use swords. You know, that may sound crazy to a lot of people, but I like getting involved in swords. I like being able to defend myself now. That's me being a man. African men are natural warriors. The paradigm that we live in is not designed for any success for African people. We're designed in this society to fail. Period. You understand? We always say things like, this society ain't controlling me, it ain't controlling me. If it ain't controlling you, why don't you go get the resources of Africa and go get it? Just go get it right now, since you God. Go get the resources. What's stopping you? Since ain't nothing stopping you. You understand what I'm saying? Why do you insist on working a situation where they give it to you? Why don't you just create it yourself? He or she. See, subconsciously something is controlling the situation that you're in. We're living in a neo-colonialistic society in America, but we play games as if we're not. We play games as if, well, what's going on with us ain't got nothing to do with what's going on in Africa. I'm like, it's the same thing, dude. In a lot of instances, what's going on with them is worse than us. We just haven't went over it yet, like myself. I just know what people told me and what I've read about based on colonialism. But we have to be able to pinpoint within ourselves as black men when we're being submissive. Like when we're not going to stand up for ourselves. Like I had that same problem for several years. Like I would just placate. I wouldn't stand up for myself. There was certain situations where it's like, you got to speak. You got to let your voice be heard. And again, this Mike Vick situation also shows that we need to get away from sports altogether, because it's not, this is becoming a coon fest, where they're creating this thing where they're clamping down harder on black males in sports, and black men are rarely speaking up about it. We're just accepting the situation for what it is, and it's like a slave camp, and that's exactly it is. It's a $40 million, it's a $1 million slave camp, and black men see. And the thing is, with the Kaepernick situation, basically what it did was it basically sent a message to black men that if you say something, this is going to happen to you. It ain't got nothing to do with his hair or anything else. It was, you stood up and you said something and you did something that went against the social norm of their situation and their power structure. And your own, or, Mike Vick or whatever, someone that people see as a strong black man, went totally submissive and just buck danced it out. This is no disrespect to him, but that you disrespected black people, Mike Vick, for what you said. It was wrong for what he said. I'm sorry, but it was wrong. And the thing is, we have to stop trying to find ways to be, to say, oh, it wasn't that bad. No, that was horrible, because our children saw that. And see, here's the thing, though. This is something that Dr. Boyce Watkins said that made a lot of sense. He said that those type of shows are on that time of day, like 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, because a lot of black men don't have jobs. So specifically, those shows target black men. A lot of them, even though ESPN really specifically like ESPN and the Fox Sports, all that stuff are really for white men. That's why if you look at their commercials, most of the time you see mostly like white products, being pushed in white, that's it's being advertised to white people. But specifically, they put black people on these shows, like the black guests, the rappers, and the actors, and they put Shannon Sharp on there to relate to black men because black men are the ones sitting at home. So when you see something like Mike Vick do this, you be like, damn, maybe Mike Vick is right. As a man, I'm looking at this, I'm saying, damn, maybe Mike Vick is right in what he said. Maybe I do need to cut my hair. Maybe I do need to do this. Maybe I do need to do that. Maybe I need to shut up. And maybe I have it easier. And see, we're going. The thing is that we think we're making headway and we're making steps, but we keep making steps backwards. It's never like a forward progress. We're either making lateral movements or we're making backwards movements with statements that we make. And whenever you see like a lone group that are like done with it, they become the crazy people, like a lone black group. Like I was looking at last night, another documentary about, MOVE organization and how they were demonized by their own people. And I'm sure, and of course, they did some crazy shit in their own neighborhood. But it was funny how there was a total racial separation. They were the bad niggas and you had the good niggas of O'Shea Avenue. But they were a group of black people who were just done with the situation. And they were like, nah, you're not going to. I'm looking at it and they were provoking the responses from white people, but why is that wrong to provoke a response? These white people have done whatever they can do to basically murder and eliminate black people for hundreds of years, since slavery, since colonialism. And the moment someone retaliates and does provoking actions, all of a sudden they're wrong for doing so? Come on, man, cut the bullshit. So we got to really look at these situations that happen, and we got to eventually turn the television off because it's becoming a coon show. Like every time we turn around, our people are disrespecting each other for a job. Let me do this so I can get this job. Let me do this so I won't get fired and I can continue making my money. And it's sad to see that because our children are seeing things like that and they're thinking, again, well, maybe this is how I'm supposed to be in this society. Our children are not supposed to be growing up in this society. I'm sorry, they're not. And we have to make a decision at some point as African people, black people, whatever word you want to use. What are we going to do to be able to combat the situation to make a better place for ourselves? Well, Jamie Pelzer said, I'm from Philly. I was 4 or 5 at the time, but I heard a lot of people say all the move stuff was lies by the police and media. Yeah, it's crazy because when you look at it, the documentary is, I know it's one called Let the Fire Burn. That one was good, but that was like light compared to the ones on YouTube about Move, Jamie, because you find out that after, the fire was done and they went inside the house, there were no weapons inside the house. And the children and the adults, they were decapitated by the police. And that's why, at some point when you look at the documentary, you hear a lot of gunshots going off. That was all like what they did with Fred Hampton, in 1966. That was all forward coming from the cops. Their whole plan was to come in with artillery, shoot everybody up, and burn that shit down. And that's exactly what they did. See, the old documentaries are there's no filter on them. Whereas this one, this new Let the Fire Burn that came out, I think 2 years ago, it's made by a white person. So you're going to get a twist. You're going to get kind of a filter. But it is what it is, And that's the thing. That's why you just think about this to yourself. We have so many movements that are totally against white people, totally against the system, anti-everything and pro-black. And a lot of us are scared of that shit. But it was no different than what was going on in, 69? Okay, 1969. Thank you for the correction, Cornell. And it's no different than what happened in the 60s. Like our inability to come together, or our ability to, every time we turn around, we find ways to say things like, well, I'm not going to be in that group because that's too aggressive. So it's like a perpetual cycle that they have us caught up in. That every time we turn around, we get caught up in trying to find a way to not be too aggressive to white people. That's why people be like, I had a conversation with a sister recently, and I'm talking about white people, and she's like, so you're going to condemn a whole race for the crimes of a few? And I'm like, which few are you talking about? Which few? Is a million a few? Is 10 million a few? Which few are you talking about? And these are conversations I have a lot. And I just, a lot of times what you got to do, and I've learned to do this, you have to test. It's like opening up your car, and you take, you take the stick and you measure the oil in the car to see exactly where we are. And it's like we're not making any surprise moves at all. We're not. All we're trying to do is be treated like a human being. And this society is telling you you're not human, and you keep trying to ask them to treat you differently, But that's reality, man. The situation with Vick is sad to see. That bothered me to my stomach to see him do that, because I'm like, wow, you totally submitted yourself. Damn. As a black man, and that's just like, that resonates, because that was nationwide, and he was a very polarized, black man, because Vick was like damn near the Jordan of football for several years. But he's no longer, you can't look up to someone like that who has no problem submitting himself to the situation. So that's my take on the situation. Thank everybody for being able to listen to what I have to say. And again, peace, black power, Hotep, and Wadu.